We're getting new details on the attack in Bangladesh, the chilling 12-hour siege inside an upscale bakery that left 20 hostages dead. 3 of the victims were students at American universities. ABC's Jennifer Eccleston is on the story from our London bureau right now. Jennifer, good morning to you.
On July 1st, 2016, gunmen stormed a bakery in Dhaka, taking hostages and beginning what would become the worst terrorist attack in the country's history. The massacre would make international headlines, inspire books and movies, and forever change Bangladesh. But what would be forgotten was that this was not a random attack. The restaurant chosen because of everything it stood for, and because of the community that formed around a place on a mission to make the world's best bread. The owners of Holey Artisan Bakery have never shared their story publicly before, but today they're opening up about how it all started, what happened on that terrible day, and how they managed to keep going against all odds, even to the present. For the first time ever, this is the true and unbelievable story of Holey Artisan Bakery. It is 5:42 in the morning, so we're an hour and 15 minutes away from opening.
Right.
4 locations that are being serviced from this place.
Correct. And we also ship bread around the country from here.
So I would guess that within the next half hour to an hour, everyone's going to be coming to pick up their orders for the day.
Right.
So right now we're kind of finishing, yeah?
Right.
Show me around the bake. Yeah.
So this place is called the Mothership. And this is the home of the mother.
This is the sourdough starter.
This is the mother.
Ooh. This is what you brought from Bangladesh, yeah?
Yeah.
So this came with you.
This I bring everywhere here, Phuket. About this much is what you need.
Yeah.
So we had this about 14 years ago, about like just this much. Ever since then, every single bread Bangladesh here is made from this. This is our mother. There's a whole wheat and there's a white. Smell it.
There are a lot of ways to start the story of Holey Artisan Bakery. As you can probably already guess, there's a ton of ground we need to cover. But at the end of the day, this is a story about bread and a single-minded obsession to make something perfect.
Look at this. So when this come out, they make a popping sound inside. All the bubbles inside, they start popping. So you put your ear by pop, 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 you know that the baguette has gone to its full. Look at this.
Wow. It's been 12 years since the first loaf of bread was sold at the original Holey location, baked in a top-of-the-line oven pretty much smuggled into Bangladesh, because no company believed anyone would be serious about making this there. But for Porag, along with his partners and staff, that would just be the start of a quest for perfection still very much ongoing. For each one by one, I'm guessing there was a moment where you tasted and you're like, hey, that's it, we got it.
Right.
What's that moment like for you when you know that you've got the taste and the flavor, the texture, and everything exactly how you want it?
Hey, it's like almost when you fall in love and you know instantly, and sometimes you make it work for you, and sometimes you know, hey, this is different. This is proper. It feels right.
Start a bill for me. I'm gonna get another croissant.
Yeah. So, do you want to try a chocolate or a ham?
Whatever you.
What do you think, ham or chocolate?
Honestly, even just the butter one was incredible.
Puff pastry? But now I want you to have our almonds. Our almonds are really good. It's got homemade frangipans. So we make our own frangipans here. Yeah. Now you try this. Yeah. More coffee, please. I think one round.
A few months after we moved to Bangkok, Daria and I had a couple friends fly over to visit from their home in Dhaka. After a late night out, we brought them to our regular daily cafe the next morning. And when they saw the sign, they did a double take. This obviously couldn't be the same Holey Artisan Bakery as the one taught in every high school classroom in Bangladesh. That would be crazy. That place was destroyed in 2016 in a hail of bombs and gunfire during a 12-hour standoff, a terrorist attack that shook the foundations of the country. Of course, I told them the name was obviously a coincidence. This was just a friendly neighborhood coffee shop that wasn't even that famous in Bangkok. We just liked it because the bread was awesome and the coffee strong enough to kill a hangover. But they did some digging, and obviously I was wrong. Somehow our daily morning hangout and the cafe that was once the biggest news story on Earth are one and the same, or at least connected, with a story just as shocking, just as wild as you might imagine. So loaded up with coffee and fresh-baked pastries, let's start at the beginning. New York City in the mid-1990s was the place to be. The peak of Seinfeld and a new show called Friends. The economy booming and all around signs of wealth and progress. The downturn of the 1970s replaced by an era of optimism and prosperity. On the other side of the world, a teenager from Dhaka, Bangladesh named Porag was trying to figure out how to get away from home. At 15, he'd left the house and tried to first make it as a cricketer, then a concert promoter. Then finally, he took his savings and booked a one-way plane ticket to the United States.
My sister was living in West Palm Beach, Boca Raton, Florida. So I was there a few months and I didn't like it. So I took a train overnight on 31st December 1993. And I arrived January 1st, 6 a.m. in Penn Station. I arrived and I left Penn Station. I came out on that 34th Street, I think, what is it, Avenue 6th. And I saw snow for the first time. It was a blizzard. And I instantly felt like I'm home. I've never felt anywhere like that. So, instantly you knew that the whole thing just connected and fell into a place. It's like, I know nothing else would have mattered after that, but I was home.
New York as an immigrant can be overwhelming, a tough place to survive. But Porag caught a lucky break almost immediately, in the right place at exactly the right time to ride the wave of a sudden craze for stuffed animals. This is a Beanie Baby. It's a flaccid bag of cloth and plastic beads that in 1994 debuted with a strategy of false exclusivity, banking on customers going crazy for something hard to find. Available only from a few vendors lucky enough to get one of the rare licenses permitting their sale. And Porag, still a teenager, somehow landed the last license awarded in New York City right before Beanie Babies went crazy.
I took a job at a coffee shop called Cindy's Cinnamon Roll. I had the job for 6 months. It's the only job I ever held outside that I didn't own. And while I was working there, there was a shop next door of a Egyptian gentleman, Osama. He was selling unique licensed toys of different kind, and Broadway memorabilia, like a Phantom of the Opera shirts, masks, to all kinds of Broadway related things, because we are at Pier 17, which is very heavy touristy, like one of the busiest places in Manhattan those days. So he was trying to focus more on the Broadway side, and he had these licenses. And he heard me like, I want to do business. I was a young man, he said, if you want it, I'll give you the license. And instead of me canceling it, you have it. And I got lucky with some toy licenses that was huge in America, and it just happened to be, nothing I did, is just I happened to be in the right place. And I was lucky with a lot of businesses, and then the mall allowed me to open a big toy shop, which was nice. So I had it for 8 years. From that toy shop, I opened 2 more toy shops in New York, and 1 more toy shop in Philadelphia downtown, and at the Board building. Then had 2 more fast food, a pizza place and a Greek place. But it was just
It's the American dream.
yeah. So I was just running and operating until everything was just flying.
The seeds for what would become Holey were planted in the Soho neighborhood of Manhattan, where in 1998 the beloved Blue Ribbon restaurant opened a partner bakery. The idea being to supply fresh baked bread to their own burgeoning empire, but with the result being a sensation that would put a modern spin on the idea of the quote, artisan bakery. Blue Ribbon didn't do it alone. Just a few blocks away, Balthazar had the same inspiration, and soon enough across New York, all of a sudden, packaged bread was out and homemade was in. And for Porag, well, this would be life-changing.
The bread for me, singular experience. There is a bakery in New York City, Blue Ribbon Bakery. So that was a Blue Ribbon downtown. We used to be open late night. So between clubs, between after hours and clubbing, that would be a place me and our friends we would go. There's a very high-end restaurant on top, but if you have to go to the bathroom, you have to go down into the basement, through the bakery, and into the thing. And I have very good memories of walking through that basement to the bathroom and watching all this bread coming out. That smell stuck with me. So for me, bread is always about smell. So when you smell something, you know right away. So I've been trying to get my bread to that Blue Ribbon, that feeling of walking down, in the basement.
The bread revolution in Manhattan was quite late compared to much of the world. Other parts of the United States had been making artisan bread for years or decades, and that's not even mentioning Europe, with its centuries-old establishments. But while by today you can find high-quality bakeries almost everywhere, back then the culture hadn't yet reached Asia, certainly not Bangladesh, a place Porag had no intention of returning until one day in 2001, when everything changed. So when did the idea first come into your mind about moving back to Bangladesh?
It happened 9/11. It happened exactly when the second plane hit the second tower. By at that time, because I saw the first building get hit.
Visually.
I saw straight up. I was looking right at it. I was on Brooklyn Bridge in my car, and I saw things. And immediately the first person from my car I called is my friend Osama, who gave me that license, because he has also had shops downtown. And I had left him on his voicemail, I didn't find him, a detailed description of what I had just seen. And my description was that it was a photo shoot or a film show going on, because I didn't see any plane. What I saw, something super fast, like a missile moving, and it going right through the building, through the center or the top, and it went in like a hot knife through butter. It went in, and as soon as it hit the center, it had a ring of rainbow color that came out from everywhere. So it could only be a New York film show. It couldn't be anything else. Like, your brain cannot compute something exceptional. So then I was driving down Brooklyn Bridge, and I came to the end of it. And I could see the top of the building, and then a big black gush of smoke coming out, and I realized this is not a film show anymore. And I started to hear sirens coming up. So I just came down the ramp around the city hall, and I parked into the Fulton Fish Market. So I don't know if you know the Fulton Fish Market. The fish market people just finished work, their night shift. They are just all coming out, and we're just watching the first building. We realized something big has happened. We didn't know or talk about planes or something went in. And we were all like 15, 20 of these guys that were watching the first tower because they're together like this and we have this position. And then we see the second plane come and hit. The moment that second plane hit, I remember that I instantly knew it was something Islamic. And I felt the other 10, 15 people, automatically their eyes trained on me. And I felt so uncomfortable. It's the first time I realized, oh my God, I'm a second-class citizen even though I'm American, but I'm looked at as different. And I said, what's the point of this? I'll just go back to my country and be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Why bother with this? Because I didn't like that look. That 1 second, and it changed immediately because it was New York. It may have been longer in other states, but New York, it changed. But our instinct was there, and I also felt it. I would have looked at the same way at me if I was on the other side. And I didn't like it. I didn't feel like, it's not worth it. I would go.
So at this point, you already know Lillian?
No, I met her in 2002, 3.
Yeah. So,
as I was leaving, 2003, end of 3. I just met her months before I left.
So tell me about the decision to go to Bangladesh, the conversations with Lillian.
I was already packed and ready to go. I was just partying in New York City with my friends 7 days a week. Yeah, and I met her, and we fell in love, and then I left.
I think I don't know. I think my mom always loved bread and butter, right? And like breakfast wasn't like all of this pancake and whatever. It was just like, let me have some bread.
Holey Artisan Bakery wouldn't have happened if Porag hadn't made a fortune in the States, then decided to move back to Bangladesh. But that's only half the story. The other half is who came with him on the 8,000-mile journey, taking the plunge together into the unknown. Give me the brief synopsis of who you are.
So I was born in U.S., so I'm a Brazilian American, and we met I was living in Manhattan, and I also lived in Jersey City for a time. And we met in New York, and he ended up having, me come to Bangladesh in like about end of 2005, and very different, life.
Yeah.
I was working with corporate design at the time, and then he, I wasn't in like, oh yeah, I'd really love to go to Bangladesh in my life ever thinking that, I enjoyed to travel and to, be in different situations, but yeah, it was pretty crazy to to do that. So
Dhaka is like, I don't know how to, it was like, going to the moon is incorrect because the moon's not overcrowded with horrible traffic. It must have been, what was your first impression when you travel?
I felt like I was in the National Geographic documentary.
It's complete organized chaos.
In 2005, Dhaka was the fastest growing city on the planet. It was only 1971 when Dhaka was made the capital of the newly independent Bangladesh, and since then, the pace of change had been frenetic. In just the 12 years since Porag had left for New York, the population had doubled, more than 15 million people now crowding into shantytowns, brand new apartment blocks, and most of all, sweatshops. The city producing textiles for clothing brands all over the world. There were still shadows of a proud history, buildings left standing from when it stood as a beacon, the home of the rich and powerful under the Mughal Empire. But those buildings were now choked in a haze of motorcycle exhaust, construction dust, and the sounds and colors of a place building layer upon layer, almost on the fly as migrants flooded in. And speaking of floods, with all the development, the Ganges Delta was swelling past the breaking point. And just 1 year earlier, the capital was swimming in a meter of standing water. Dhaka was a city in motion, everyone fighting to stay above water, literally and figuratively. And with so much change in a short amount of time, there was also tension. Since the late 1970s, Bangladesh had been divided between supporters of various political parties, primarily the right-wing nationalists who favored strict Islamic law, and the center-left Awami League, which at least nominally pushed for secular policies and ties to the West. Beginning in 1999, the conflict turned violent. At least 5 Awami League rallies bombed by Muslim hardliners, and assassinations becoming commonplace, all of it reaching a fever pitch in 2005.
You know, it didn't feel like it's not like I felt very well to just go out and be on my own. I think, maybe it's different for a man and a woman. And I tried to assimilate at first, and I felt like that was worse than trying to just, be myself, meaning like, putting on the clothes and everything and trying to assimilate. It just didn't seem to work. I was like, keeping your person, I think, is
So you wanted to keep true to who you are. Who are you? What drives you? What makes you who you are? Tell me a little bit about, yourself, because obviously that's going to factor into what Holey would become, because we're going to talk about the business in a minute.
Yeah, so in terms of that, like, I, enjoy exploring and taking in art, culture. I think, being around community, so how do I say this? Like, I think it was like adventure, to be there and to, change things. I always actually was interested also in having like a small spot, like a little business, a little cafe. So that was one of the ways that kind of started in Dhaka. We had a friend who was already a restaurateur that we were, quite friends with. And, even in that direction, I was interested to, we were talking about doing something with him, like on a smaller scale like that. So it was like something I had thought about before for some time, even like being in New York. I always enjoyed the little places, like a little wine bar, obviously not that there. So, the bars are more on the windows, so they're not on the road.
After settling into life in Dhaka, Porag went to work in his family business while Lillian began to think about a project. And the idea for a bakery came about from the simple realization that there wasn't one at all.
The bread was pretty much what you get in a supermarket, basically white toasted, this kind of bread. And there is obviously the Bangladeshi Indian in subcontinent. You have naan, you have paratha, you have roti. Unleavened bread is what our experience is. Leavened bread did not exist. I don't remember leavened bread ever at all.
I remember there was a French baker, or a Frenchman who would bake bread, country bread, a few years before, and everyone was very excited, and I also got excited. I was like, oh, let me go see this. And then when I, got the bread, I was like a bit sad. I was, I said, oh, it's very heavy. And then someone said, that's country bread. And I said, oh, okay.
You don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't know this bread.
After the first year or so, she said this city does not have good, proper bread and proper coffee. Two of those things, it's not civilized. So I think, we should look to move somewhere. And I couldn't move that time. I didn't want to. So I said, I will solve this problem. And then we had Rick, another American friend who had just opened the first roastery. And it was decent enough that we didn't have to worry about that. But the bread was still something that was bad. And I said, how difficult the bread can be. It's so easy. Everywhere you have bread. Everybody eats bread. Everybody makes bread. But it is much more complex when you go deeper into it.
There was, for instance, like a fancy hotel that would have like the nice bread looking, but it wasn't real, It was like you bite into it and it's not very good. And then Porag's, oh, always like, oh, I can just make it, or we can just do this right at home. And it was funny. I was like, oh, it's not really, it's not really coming out.
There was never supposed to be a Holey Artisan Bakery. Porag just got competitive. Basically, the short version is he refused to accept that his homemade bread meant to placate Lillian was a train wreck. So he emailed a handful of top bakers and was told that part of the problem was the intense humidity. Nobody at the time had ever made true artisan bread in the Asian tropics. Undeterred, Porag tracked down a consultant named Maurice Chaplet, a master of his craft and also the only consultant who'd previously worked in India. So at least he knew what to expect.
So I asked him to come, if he would come to Bangladesh from London for 3 days, and just to talk and show if anything is possible. And we made a date. He came over. He brought in like 10 kilos of flour. Within few hours of arriving in my apartment, we made breads that were better than anything I have ever made. And he said, this is, once you have proper equipment, means for, then you call me and I'll come and train you, and only you and not any staff. You can train your staff later. I said, why? He said, because I teach, people pay me money and I teach their staff, and the staff leaves, the owners get, people who paid got nothing. So that's a commitment, because that's where you will come. And I said, great. And I said, so you have to teach me, if I'm going to spend time, how to make the best bread in the world. He said, to make best bread in the world, first thing you need is you have to get the best oven in the world. Your bread will never be better than your oven you're baking it in, no matter what you do. All that thing, what you will put together side by side is the oven that can execute it, right? So he gave me a list of top of the line in the best in the world equipment. He said, I only work with this. And I think he wanted to see how committed I was. And I said, if you want to make best bread in the world, these are the equipments you need to order, mostly from France, Germany, and US. And when you have this ready, you call me, I will come however long, month, 2 months. So I started calling up this French company, Strasbourg, Bongard, it's one of the top bakery oven manufacturer, 125-year-old, one patented oven. And the salesman from their Strasbourg office kept hanging up on me, and he wouldn't take me seriously. And then he finally said, look, man, nobody in Bangladesh will ever order and make bread with this oven. So so I'm not going to sell you anything, okay? So, and then my guy will not come. So I called somebody I knew in Kuala Lumpur, importer, exporter. I said, can you order all of this and then reship it from KL to me at an extra cost and stuff? So I did it, and then we brought and set up all this equipment, and I took all the picture and I sent them. That company became very close friends with me over the last 10, 12 years. We bought millions of dollars of equipment, and yeah, I know them personally in their factory, people. So the oven that we have now at Holey at the Mothership is specially designed with special steam capacity to make a very special sourdough bread.
In the middle of the 1980s, the Soviet Union was finally, after years of attrition, gaining the upper hand in the war in Afghanistan. With 100,000 soldiers, the Soviets had occupied major Afghan cities and were consolidating control over large swaths of territory. Following all of this carefully from his home in Saudi Arabia was a 27-year-old named Osama bin Laden, an heir to a massive construction company. Now, even though bin Laden's family was all about business, he himself was a zealot from an early age, a follower of the Muslim Brotherhood who saw a secular Soviet presence in the Middle East as catastrophic. So with the Afghans on the back foot, bin Laden came to help, using his family fortune and connections to set up an organization called the Maktab al-Qadimat, today known as Al-Qaeda. The idea was for the group to serve as a foreign legion, recruiting fighters from other Muslim countries to join what bin Laden saw as a jihad, or holy war. Thousands would arrive, then tens of thousands, all sent first to new compounds built in Pakistan, camps meant to teach guerrilla tactics and a radicalized view of Islam. When the Soviets left in 1989, the veterans of these camps were no longer needed, so they went back home, arriving in their own countries armed with weapons, bomb-making knowledge, and a hatred for the West. The jihad was over, but not for them. All across the Muslim world, from North Africa to the Persian Gulf to Central Asia, countries that had been at relative peace suddenly had a new domestic threat on their hands, and that would include Bangladesh as well. The first organization based in Dhaka of these returning fighters was called the Hujib, which formed in 1992 to demand Sharia law and provided support to the right-wing nationalists against the Awami League. But some of its followers didn't think it was going far enough, so a splinter group would emerge a few years later called the Jamaat al-Mujahideen, or JMB. The JMB was led by Abdur Rahman, a radical Islamic militant and veteran of bin Laden's training camps, and his group would burst onto the national scene in 2005, placing bombs in more than 300 locations across Bangladesh and rigging them to explode simultaneously. In the aftermath of this attack, the JMB set out on an aggressive campaign of political assassinations, targeting judges, members of the media, and even women without headscarves. The Bangladeshi public was horrified by the violence and in 2009 swept the right wing out of power, electing the Awami League with a mandate to crack down on terrorism, and they did. Harsh laws were passed, guns and money were seized, and things started to get better. Around the same time this was happening all across the Muslim world, a wave of optimism and rejection of theocracy that would come to be called the Arab Spring. But this was not the end of the story. In 2014, another organization, started by a veteran of the Afghan War, would explode from the shadows and declare the start of a new Muslim caliphate based in Iraq. ISIS would gain followers and network with other hidden terrorist cells across the region, including the JMB, smuggling weapons and encouraging dramatic acts of violence. To the JMB, this was a new lease on life, and they began planning something big to announce their revival to the Bangladeshi public. They needed a target, a symbol of everything they opposed, something secular and Western, something that represented exactly the kind of hope they wanted to destroy. So for you to buy all this equipment, you must have already at that point had a location.
We had no location. We ordered the equipment. We had no idea what the size of these equipments were. So I had my local partner who was, with me on this project from the get-go. His name is Sadat. And he owned a restaurant, Japanese, and we thought we could put them on top on the second floor of that. When the equipment arrived in Dhaka, finally, it's just no. And his wife had a house that just was vacated and it was available. So he said, should we take it? I said, yeah, let's put it here. He said, that's a big rent. That means we would have to sell a lot of bread to make sense. And I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I don't think that far ahead. It's like, I need to make the bread at home.
Tell me about that Eureka moment. What was that like? What was the moment? Was it one?
Oh, so we'd been doing the breads and, trials and trials. And then, finally it's like looking nicer. And then the holes are there and we're discussing it. And how about this? And all of the elements that, that you want with the hydration and everything. And I said, that's what we should call it. It should be holy.
That was the place. We put everything in there. Then we started breaking and building that house to fit. And as we were making this incredible dough and bread, we naturally wanted to make pizza. So we had the best pizza dough and we were making amazing pizza, but I was not very happy with the mozzarella that was coming out. So I got an Italian gentleman, Jacopo, who was living in Malaysia or Brunei, very knowledgeable, several third generation cheesemaker. He was working there. I brought him to Bangladesh to see what's going on, how we can make mozzarella, yogurt, things like that. He brought in, I got him to move with his wife, started making mozzarella fresh for our pizza, and then he was making yogurt. So for that, we sent our local Bangladeshi milk to Italy to design the bacteria for the milk instead of getting the bacteria to adapt to our milk, and we found that was the best way. So we were making this amazing pizza with amazing dough and the pizza was great. And I was like, I had a friend who had a Spanish chef friend available from Madrid. His name is Gaston. So I contacted him and said, would you like to work in Bangladesh? I'm doing this bread now and this cheese. And he came in for a few days, 3 days, and he liked everything. And then he came in, he brought his another friend, Diego. These two moved in Bangladesh with Jacopo and his wife. So the four were running the show with my friend Sadat, and we were just doing this amazing things, which became very popular amongst expats. Like they'd never seen in Bangladesh something like that, making like proper mozzarella.
Tell me what it would have been like for me in 2015 when it was at its peak to go to Holey. What was it like?
It would be any given day. We would open at 7. We would close at midnight every single day. We would be running out of our chairs, plates, forks, knives. I would have people in the lawn sitting on a sheet just asking for food. The energy and the vibe.
So you would enter into like a little oasis at the end of the road, and then you'd have the two-story. The facade was one of the most interesting things was there's an artist who was always painting and building on it, and the place was always evolving.
With a big lawn in front of a big house, surrounded by a lake, in the poshest part of Bangladesh, you would have anywhere from 2 to 5 ambassadors having breakfast, lunch, or dinner. You could have all the politicians, business people, to all walks of life.
There would be green, lawn, like a home, right? With this transformation, and I think you have photos that you can see. This would be good for. If I could show you at the same time would be helpful, but yeah, people would even be enjoying sitting inside or outside, like picnic style, and it would be quite diverse. So it would be everyone mixed up. And then otherwise in Gulshan area, a lot of the times these people, there's like bubbles and pockets, right? And people are in like these like the clubs, which are, you have to be either signed in, right? So all of this is a very different, even though this socializing was nice, you go to these places, but it's quite a different feeling. Anyone could just walk in. And, that's created a different atmosphere. So things that you're more used to seeing anywhere, like in New York. Then you will go in to a place and everyone can, it's quite diverse.
So at some point, business is good. You decide that you're going to expand and you look at Bangkok. What was the Bangkok story?
I did not like living in Dhaka. So I bought a big plot of land, about an hour and a half drive from Dhaka city, and my goal was to live there in that farmhouse, grow my own stuff, come into Dhaka 1 or 2 nights, 2 days to do whatever I need to get it done, and that would be my farmhouse. And as I was working on it, one day I went to visit, and that 1.5 hour journey took me over 4+ hours. And I was like, if it takes 4 hours, I would rather live in Thailand, Bangkok, and then come here for 2 days. And that's what I did in the beginning.
So you had kids at this point, and so you wanted to raise kids in Bangkok.
Yeah,
So
the kids raised in Bangkok. Yeah.
You have now, when did you move to Bangkok?
2016, beginning. So the first idea was to move. And then by that time, we had already were making bread, and that thing was successful. It just made sense to have our bread that we will not be eating any other bread. It was not possible. So we wanted to naturally make bread here. But my condition was that it would have to be within walking distance from where I'm living, because I didn't want to do a whole lot here. I mean, traffic is just, bores me. So as I rented the house and on Soi 33, I was with my broker, and I was telling her, if there was a nearby location that could be good for, I could do a bakery because we already know how to make bread. And he said, I just saw this corner location. If you want, we can go take a look. It's not on my list, or it's not for rent. We don't know the owner. And I came in, I really liked it. And I said, okay, if you can sort it out, then I'll take this and we'll do the bakery. So that's basically how we did the bakery here. And, moving was with or without the bakery, we would have moved.
Welcome to Holey Artisan Bakery, at least the version where Daria and I used to go for our morning coffee and croissant, the place we thought was just another Bangkok cafe until our friends from Bangladesh told us otherwise. When we first found out about the massacre in Dhaka, we couldn't understand why this wasn't well known, why everyone in Bangkok hadn't heard the unbelievable story of a place that by all rights should have been famous. But eventually it started to make sense. The idea for Holey when Lillian first came up with the concept back in 2005 was for an oasis, a sanctuary to tune out all the bad stuff happening at the time around her city. It was never meant to be about the restaurant, just the customer. And that didn't change even after the attack. When you come into Holey, you're supposed to think about the taste of the food, the over-the-top strong coffee, and that's it. So until today, Porag and Lillian had never told their full story. Not once. It makes even more sense when you think about the fact that they were in Lower Manhattan on 9/11. For years, Porag had operated 3 toy stores within walking distance of the Twin Towers, his days spent in the shadows of the center of global finance. But today, if you mention the World Trade Center, the first thing that comes to mind is not stock trading or prosperity. The 1972 Munich Olympics were revolutionary in facilities and ceremonies, and even featured the first ever Olympic mascot, a dachshund named Waldy. But none of that makes the history books. And even way back in the 19th century, a satire called Our American Cousin once captivated Broadway, drawing rave reviews and starring the most celebrated actors, but now it's just the punchline to the famous joke. Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? Here's my point. All of those places or events were targeted because they were extraordinary, and they were chosen intentionally to get attention, to make a statement, or to maximize pain by destroying something that brought joy. And Holey Artisan Bakery was a joyful place. It still is here in Bangkok. And while we need to talk about what happened on that terrible day, it's important not to lose sight of what was and what was lost.
Now there's some breaking news out of Bangladesh now. Gunmen have attacked a popular restaurant in Dhaka. The attack happened in the diplomatic quarter of the capital. The area is popular with foreigners. The US Embassy in Dhaka has said on its Twitter page there are reports of a shooting and a hostage situation. So let's go straight now.
At 9:40 p.m. on the night of July 1st, 5 men entered Holey Artisan Bakery in Dhaka, opening fire on staff and customers and detonating homemade explosives. As police arrived on the scene, the attack became a standoff, the terrorists shooting at anyone trying to approach, and all those trapped inside now hostages, at least those who were still alive. The next 12 hours would be unimaginable. All night and into the next morning, nobody outside the bakery itself knew what was happening. Families of hostages, Porag and Lillian, and soon the entire world waited for any news. So you're in Bangkok. You've opened in June. Yeah?
June 9th.
June 9th. So you've been open for 3 weeks. You're in Bangkok
I am in Bangkok.
on July 1st.
Actually, it's 30th night, June. The thing is on, I don't think it was first. It was also the 27th of Ramadan, which is the holiest of night. Just to give you a context of that night. Right? In Dhaka. Yeah.
Tell me your experiences of what happened.
I got a call from one of my friends in Dhaka. I had two of my closest friends from New York was visiting that week with their family. So one was arrived in my house and one was on flight coming in as I was getting this call that there's something happening at Holey Dhaka and that's not good. But we don't have a whole lot of information. So I was the only one who had a camera connected to my phone, so I could see what was happening from the inside. And I noticed a lot of chaos, a lot of running around, but it was not very clear.
When home and when I learned about it, was horrified and just really feeling just I don't know, just really awful. And just trying to understand what's going to happen, waiting for information, trying to just talking to everyone and seeing it, just very surreal to see this happening. And yeah.
So then I finally got in touch with my partner there, Sadat, who was operating it, who had just left the restaurant to go to his other restaurant when this happened. And from there on, I tried to all night communicate with Sadat, who was working with the different security teams in Bangladesh, from rapid action battalions to police to army. Every 4 branches were involved for 12 hours of hostage. And throughout that time, I was on the phone back and forth, seeing whatever I could see from the video inside. And it went on for 12 hours. By 9 a.m., this was the time that they were killed, the 4 terrorists. And that meant at the end. So, yeah.
When did you understand what was happening? When somebody said to you, it's a hostage situation, there are...
Yeah, and also this friend told me I had friends are in there now. So that was also, and one of my favorite staff was there. So I was worried about those things actually. I was worried about the Italian cheesemaker who was in the kitchen. I was worried about Diego, who was in the kitchen. Gaston happened to be on vacation those weeks, so he wasn't there. So I was worried for them. Yeah, so that was my concern, with only the staff and the friends I was thinking. I was not thinking that far ahead. I didn't know who was actually there that night, but I had one of my friends there, but I didn't know who. And so that's the biggest concern, the staff and the guest and these foreign people, the chefs that were coming in to basically work with me and work for this great project.
Not everybody got out.
2 of my staff didn't make it. One was the one that got killed first, as soon as it was the first second he was killed. And then another one tried to, a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, he tried to jump from the 3rd floor roof and he landed on an electrical wire. And yeah, I mean, throughout the night, I mean, there's step by step everything happened, and I know a lot of details because my childhood roommate friend was head of security, so he fed me a lot of information of how minute by minute he was on the ground the whole time.
The rescue operation to end the hostage standoff would begin at 7:40 in the morning, a massive strike force overseen by the Prime Minister, combining all branches of the Bangladeshi military along with police, SWAT teams, and tactical battalions. Only then would the full extent of the tragedy become clear. 20 customers, 2 staff members, and 2 police officers had been killed, along with the terrorists. A combined total of 29 fatalities, the worst attack in the country's history. Over the next days and weeks, stories would filter out providing details, each one more heartbreaking than the last. Victims given the chance to leave but choosing to stay to protect friends or family. Patrons forced to recite verses from the Quran, then butchered with machetes if they couldn't do it. Lives cut short, an Indian college student from UC Berkeley in Dhaka for an internship. An Italian textile trader having a farewell party, on her way home to deliver her first child. 7 Japanese transportation consultants in Dhaka to make a plan for traffic management. 2 Bangladeshi friends on holiday from Emory University in Atlanta. Locals and foreigners, a cross-section of society, and exactly what the terrorists opposed.
From what I understand, they had studied that place for 6 to 7 months. We were pretty visible from outside, so anyone from outside could have, because there's a net that you see through from the lakeside, and the lakeside path people could have come. Apparently these guys also came into the restaurant many times because they had details drawing of every floor, every room, everything, so they had done quite a good study, and they wanted to make the most noise. The white people in a place like this would have made the most noise.
I think it was just an easier target, I guess, if you think of it, like its location. You cannot run really out of there so easily, and maybe, and also it's, you know, maybe that community, that diversity that is there, you know. It was targeted by people who were aware of it, right? They had been there, these like brainwashed kids.
From the minute the attack was broadcast on television, ISIS claimed credit, tweeting updates and celebrating the achievement. Though the terrorists themselves were not outsiders. Over time, as the story unfolded, it became clear that this was a domestic attack. Homegrown jihadis trained under the JMB, and all of them came from wealthy families. Most had traveled abroad or studied at foreign universities. It didn't make sense, and it shook Bangladesh to its core. The government would make a show out of chasing down anyone involved in the planning, and the raids that would follow turned Dhaka into a war zone. Hundreds of suspected terrorists were killed, as were multiple police and civilians, including Porag's childhood best friend who oversaw the investigation. And then on December 18th, in a trial that made news around the world, 8 alleged masterminds of the JMB were charged with planning the attack. One was acquitted, the other 7 sentenced to death, though that would later be commuted to life in prison. The story of the massacre at Holey Artisan Bakery would be covered by every major newspaper and television network. There would be a book, a statue, a collection of poetry, and not 1 but 2 big-budget movies. One from India, and the other a production of Bangladesh, Germany, and Russia. But in the rush to report the sensational details, what was often ignored was the real target. Not the people, but the sense of hope, a long-simmering desire for something better for Bangladesh, nurtured since independence in 1971, and finally made real, brought into 3-dimensional existence by a simple bakery, a place just trying to make really good bread. What do you want people to know about you and about Holey? They haven't heard a word since 2016. What should they know?
They should know that there was a beautiful thing that was started, and it changed a lot of people, their mind and their perspective, and inspired a lot of people to do whatever they're doing to do it better, to make an exception, right? The bread we were doing, you could be special in whatever you do, but as long as you are trying to do that, and I would like only people to remember that. And something accident happens, like it happens to any families. You have loved ones disappear, but if that's your way, you should take on from what is the love moments gave you and those people and the places that gave you, and you can nurture that and cherish that for your life, and not take that accident to ruin those moments and then take inspiration from it.
I appreciate what it was, and I think it's hard to I don't think I will get over that happening, but also I'm gonna have to continue and, like I said, bring more love and good into the world, and then let those things sink you.
Good, very good. Yeah? And yours? I didn't have a trip. I was here. Well, you were.
Today is a big day at Holey Artisan Bakery. Every year in mid-February, the team gets together to make an offering, to give thanks and say a blessing for what they call the mother, the sourdough starter, the foundation of everything from the very first loaves of bread baked in Porag's home oven, to the pastries and baguettes now sold across Thailand.
Everything at Holey is made with this mother culture. It's 21 years old today. We received about 12, 13 years ago, about this much from UK, from the guy who taught us how to make bread. From there, every single piece of bread for the last 12 years, 13 years has been made with this. So every year, February 14th, it's an arbitrary date. I think the birthday is right around here, but we figure as a Valentine's Day, this is our birthday. So this is now 21 years. We've been making it. Hopefully it'll last hundreds of years. And every year it develops flavor, develops characters from all the love and care we show it.
เจ้าที่เทวดานางปิยะสุดวามหาลาโภประสิทธิลาภาประสันนะจิตตาสีทาสุทธิพระวันตุเม ขอบารมีพระภูมิเจ้าที่เจ้าทางบัดนี้ข้าพเจ้าบริษัท Holey Artisan ขอจุดธูปเพื่อสักการะเทพ16 ชั้นฟ้า15 ชั้นดินจงเปิดทางทรัพย์ให้ร้าน Holey Artisan ค้าขายดีลูกค้าแน่นร้านเงินทองไหลมาเทมา
Yeah, didn't cross my mind that this is something I don't want to be involved in because this happened. I think really we had the opposite, like we're not going to let that people, because you don't want to let people win like that. In fact, one of the things I did not actually want, a lot of people did reach out to me like, oh, you want to speak about this, but at that point I was like, I feel like it's a little bit of a feeding frenzy to talk about this. And one thing I don't want to do is, one thing I always also wonder when these things happen is like, you don't want to give these the power of doing this and that you've destroyed things or that you're upsetting things. They're not achieving anything, and that's what the message should be to them. You are not winning by doing this.
Was it hard for you to
Because
do another bakery, to go back?
I wanted to honor people from that day. I wanted to honor for all the things that spirit we created, and I wanted to continue. If I didn't continue, because anything of that would be completely destroying everything that was built. If you see that album on that thing, it's quite beautiful, right?
It's quite beautiful.
So we wanted to have that spirit and continue on and make this Thailand business more successful, because now I don't want that Holey name to go. The government of Bangladesh didn't let us keep the name Holey, which was one of the reasons I didn't want to because the government thought we had a 15-year-old one government who it happened on their time, and they thought that the name Holey brings up their lack of security in the country, so they didn't want that name mentioned. So when we went for subsequent license renewal, they said you cannot have that name Holey anymore. So now it's called the Oro Bakery, not Holey. Holey doesn't exist in Bangladesh. So it gave me more of a thing to bring it, since I already have the Holey name here, they cannot stop me here. So I'm going to keep this going because now it's always there.
In the aftermath of the massacre, the Awami League government went into damage control, deflecting blame and cracking down on dissent. The optimism that surrounded their election back in 2009 collapsed into fear and oppression, and finally, the overthrow of the Prime Minister, Bangladesh once again starting over from scratch. But just like the JMB once went into hiding, waiting for their moment, there are signs that the hope and optimism once found at Holey Artisan Bakery wasn't extinguished forever, and Dhaka is still standing, resilient, broken but not defeated. As for Holey itself, well, it would rebuild a short distance from the original location under the new name Oro. In its own right, Oro would gain a reputation as one of the best restaurants in the city, recently expanding to a second location focused on coffee and breakfast. There are 5 locations of Holey Artisan Bakery in Thailand, 4 in Bangkok and a new one in Phuket, opened in March 2025. Lillian now manages the operations of the growing business. And for Porag, well, he's thrown himself into a new project, once again with the goal of transforming Bangladesh. Though this time it's not the culture he's out to change, it's the environment, the smog and pollution and poverty, once again through food. He's building a cooking school that, when completed, will be the largest bamboo structure anywhere on Earth. The goal is to train a new generation of chefs on sustainability, organic farming, and use of natural ingredients. In a way, it's crazy that for the first year Dari and I hung out in this cafe, we had no idea what Holey was. Virtually none of the customers aware of the connection to such intense tragedy. But the story of Holey has always been about much more than July 1st, 2016. It was before, and it certainly is after. It's a story spanning half the planet, of community, hope, and optimism, and most of all, a story of bread, and the single-minded quest to make something special. Not that I would have any idea, because nobody else in the world really has been through what you've been through on this, except for your partners and your staff.
Yeah.
This is unique. This is not, nobody can relate to this, to what you went through in 2016. Is that a reason why you don't make a big deal out of it in your business? You want people to judge you by the product? I don't understand really.
Because right now, if you look at Holey, if you search, it's all that death, destruction, and blood. And we had such a beautiful flower, and I feel like it's a smashed flower that's in the perception and everywhere. So I don't talk about it, I don't relate to it, because enough time has passed. The first time I'm talking about this. That's why the 2 days after I put that album up. Because until that day, that's how it was, and not all the images of blood and gore in the news and information. It breaks my heart even more. It's like seeing your mutilated child being put on, for whatever reason, and it doesn't need to. I never saw the movie they made. I never saw any of these things. Never saw a video. Never saw, and I did not even look back into it because I already had a mission, and now you have to keep this name going, make this name bigger, and the more it goes, and something even bigger flower will come out of it, because when you come out of, from these kind of places, I think it makes that flower even gets a different characteristic to it, which normally would not happen, and somehow I was fortunately, unfortunately in a place to make a different kind of flower that I like. Chef,
So this is one of those days when I have no concept of what time it is, only the fact that I am hungry. And we got up to the bakery at 5 o'clock this morning, had our cookies and croissants and a sausage roll, went back to sleep for a little while, but now it's finally lunchtime and everything was great. Tell me what we have on the table.
This is fantastic because a lot of these things, you saw the beginning process getting baked in the morning. The butter croissant, one of our kind of tentpole products, Normandy butter, hand laminated at Mothership. We have our pesci, which is a smoked salmon focaccia sandwich, a little bit of preserved lemon cream on there. Salmon's from Tasmania, smoked in-house. Our ratatouille, one of my favorite kind of Provençal braised dishes. I serve it cold. I think it's more refreshing, along with the cold gazpacho, which is gaining some popularity, some notoriety in Bangkok. This is kind of the hero of Holey. It's our Cubano sandwich. House smoked bacon, pickled jalapenos, pickled cucumbers, a bit of mustard, pressed, of course, on the panini bread.
That's my first, I'm diving straight into that. I strategically chose my seat, so I'm
You knew
right
what you
next
were
to
doing.
that, right?
That's the sandwich that got me inspired to join this team, actually. So we have our bread and butter tasting over here. That'll let you try different varieties of our freshly baked bread, along with 4 different compound butters. You have a mango butter, kind of sweet and salty, Caesar butter, caramelized onion, and a tomato butter. Really high umami on the tomato butter, and a nice rocket salad here to kind of round out the meal.
What to you makes a good croissant?
The butter. These are all from Normandy. We import about 800 kilo to a ton of butter from Normandy. They fly in every month. You cannot make it without these particular kind of butter. The rest is about your character, being able to keep all of these layers, all the butter and all the flour.
This is really good.
Yeah. I want him to have one piece, please. I am proud of everything, otherwise I can't sleep. If it has to be, because I feel any product that I sell from any shop and the service, it represents me. And to have someone look at me and say, oh, he's subpar or low quality would be the worst thing that happens to me.
If you're watching this and you have not had a chance to come to any of the Holeys, I hope you come to all of them because they're fantastic, and you have to have the best bread, right? So.
I invite everyone watching to come experience Holey in Bangkok. We have 4 locations now, and Phuket 1 location. And if you are adventurous, please come to Holey Mothership in Soi 71, where you can actually experience the bread being made and food being cooked, and you're in the middle of everything. So please do come.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Subscribe to the channel for more from OTR. Thank you so much to everyone who supports us on Patreon. It really helps to keep us going. Find links below to our Patreon and social media, and we'll see you soon.
When we started looking into the bread and we had the consultant from UK coming to Bangladesh, we realized the problem was the way the wheat was being processed to that particular climate.
Yep.
So you can make bread anywhere, you just have to adjust the milling process of it. So we first go to the miller,
Yep.
and we ask them, can you do these things to the wheat when you're milling it, because we're looking for certain characteristics. So when they do it, they give us sample and they bring it here.
Your own proprietary blend of wheats as well.
we are.
Yeah.
But I say, you know, where there's nothing, everything is open. There is no secret. We don't keep anything. Why? Because it's not here. The bread of this kind, where there's a multi-day process going on, it's not about ingredients. It's not about recipes, which you can download from anywhere. The expertise comes from your character. So if a character makes shortcut, a character makes something that, you know, you'll never have a bread like this.
Like this.
Like this. Look at this baguette. It's unbelievable.